Well, it's one for the money, two for the show, three to get ready. Now go, cat.
Hello there, my name is Johnny Kaj, and I'll be in charge of your interview for today. Hey, you have the same name too. Nice to meet you. I am aware. Please have a seat. Okay. Alright, Mr. Pham, let us start with your interview. The first question: what was post-World War America like? Describe the society, the economic activity, and the government during the time. What were the issues that had existed during the time, and how would you have handled those situations? America, post-World War II, would go on to be known as one of America's finest moments in U.S. history. Most of that is due to the part that we, as Americans, have obtained victory in the Second World War. Now, it is obvious that there's positive vibes and feelings in the American atmosphere. But really, as a nation, we have really come a long way in terms of the past, obviously. Post-World War II America means the 1950s, and this is known as the Golden Age for America. Now, the reason why it's called the Golden Age of America is due to the fact of all the innovations and the new ideas that are present within this era. Whether it's socially or entertainment-wise. Some of the issues that still existed within this area included the work labor issues, such as strikers striking, and Truman had to really had to clamp on them in a way on how they should get back to work or else they'll get drafted into the army. And another issue, and this is a big issue during the era, is the issue of civil rights. And many of the important figures during this era include, but not limited to, Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. These figures would play an important role in the outcome of the whole fight in general. And had I been in charge of these issues and resolving these issues, I would have, for the strikers, I would have done what Truman had and threatened them with the act of possibly drafting them into the army. And onto the civil rights movement issue, I would have mainly done what these people have done, Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. I would have constantly had to preach and with actions protest against the equality between races. Okay, on to the second question. Describe why you believe that the 1950s was referred to as the decade of the American dream. Please provide specific examples. Think about how organizations have changed, how America has become more suburbanized, and how the baby boom occurred, how automedia thrived, and how many Americans became enthralled with consumerism. As I have mentioned before, the 1950s is referred to as the Golden Age of America. And the reason why it's known as that era is because of all the new ideas and trends that were being introduced during the time. Some of the examples are of that, the suburbanization of America. Many of these suburbs were being introduced, and suburbs are essentially like these houses along the coastline, and they were mainly for veterans returning home to families, and this actually leads into the second idea, that's the second point that I'm going to go into about the baby boom. With these veterans coming back from the war and having not seen their wives for quite some time, allows for some intense and intimate feelings to be introduced, and thus calls for the baby boom, which essentially the baby boom was essentially an era where babies were being born everywhere. And with these growing populations of Americans, called for these, as I mentioned, these suburbs. I see these ideas go hand in hand with each other. And along with these houses and kids with Americans, also calls for the use of automobiles. And by the end of the 1950s, almost 80% of Americans own a vehicle of some sort. And that says a lot. Okay, and on to the idea of consumerism. Uh, many products, such as household appliances and stuff, came into popularity and thus called for uh, American consumerism. And this is where like shopping became really popular during the time as well. That's why you see a bunch of ads for household appliances such as microwaves, washing machines, and vacuum cleaners became so prominent during this time as well. Okay, now we are at the final question of the interview. If you had lived during the 1950s, what role or life would your life? Right. Um, I think my life role, had I lived in the 1950s, would have been not much different from today in terms of goals and dreams and aspirations. I am 16 right now, and I would have been a teenager back then, so I would have probably been in school, working my way towards college as I am now, and I'd probably have a side job working at either fast food back then, but not now. But fast food places were quite prevalent during this era, such as McDonald's and other sorts. And so, yeah, I as a teenager there wasn't really much for a teenager to do besides listening to the music there, such as rock and roll, as I have mentioned before, and just hoping that life would work out for me, essentially. So to recap, my life back then would probably be just being in school, having a possible side job, and planning to go to college later on. And it's very similar now, I guess. So, well, Mr. Pham, I think I've heard all I needed to hear. It was nice meeting you. Well, it was nice to meet you too.